You may have heard that Bolivia has lately been celebrating a triumph of democracy.
The resignation yesterday of Bolivian President Evo Morales is a significant moment for democracy in the Western Hemisphere. These events send a strong signal to the legitimate regimes in Venezuela and Nicaragua that democracy and the will of the people will always prevail.
I don't know if it was a breeze in South America or if it was a Bolivian hurricane of democracy, but here today I feel a little breeze in Venezuela of freedom and justice.
Well, here's what a triumph of democracy has looked like in Bolivia. President Morales resigned. The vice president resigned. The president of the Senate, the third person in line for the top job, you guessed it, resigned. The Bolivian army and security forces are the only viable force left after they renounced their allegiance to the government and took the side of the protesters.
We suggest to the President of the state to resign his presidential mandate to allow for peace and stability for the good of our Bolivia.
But it's not as black and white as the anti-government side might want you to think. Plenty of people have been supporting Evo Morales in the streets, and it's them who have been getting the short end of the stick here. In fact, that was the key reason for Morales to throw in the towel. He wanted the violence to cease.
Why am I deciding to resign? So the opposition does not keep pursuing my brothers and the unions. We are resigning. I am resigning precisely so that my brothers and sisters, leaders and authorities of the socialist movements don't continue to be held hostage, chased and threatened.
Because in Bolivia, Morales has not one, not 100, not 1,000 supporters. He's got millions. This October, 47% of Bolivians voted for Morales. And while critics of the ballot are screaming bloody murder, the suspected election fraud is within a 3% margin. Evo Morales, a die-hard leftist, has been leading Bolivia for 14 years. Under his rule, the country's economy has been growing faster than at any period over the past 3.5 decades. Morales, viewed as the voice of the poor, managed to drastically reduce poverty and economic inequality. He significantly increased the minimum wage too and boosted social spending. Millions had no problem with that, and all of them are now represented and protected by nobody.
The opposition is now enjoying its fleeting triumph. I hope that this will not lead to even more violence, because Evo Morales has huge support among the population. When everything calms down, most Bolivians, and I believe that they are good people, will realize that they have been manipulated. They'll have something to compare. For 13 to 14 years, Bolivia has experienced the highest level of prosperity in its history. There has been stability, economic growth, the elimination of illiteracy, the reduction of extreme poverty to almost a third. The question of who won the election isn't worth it. Everyone knows that Evo Morales won. The only question is the margin by which he won, and the right are calling for violence, and in the most insolent way. There are considerable resources and weapons behind them. If there are clashes in the streets, when there are no law enforcement agencies, when the police take part in riots, when the military says it will not go against the people, will not guard the embassies, the palace of government, what is left for Evo Morales to do to avoid bloodshed, to avoid more violence? Furthermore, the army commander asked him to resign. What could he do to avoid even more bloodshed and violence? Just leave. But this is what we call a coup. The Organization of American States not only allowed this, but is also part of this coup. The Organization of American States has always been a tool in the hands of the US, but it never acted so brazenly as under the leadership of Luis Almagro, who sold himself to the US. It is time for us, Latin Americans, to create something of our own. We cannot continue to resolve our disputes in Washington, or even worse, in the Organization of American States.